Inside baseball on how conference talks work, you pitch like the talk, the title and an abstract, and then you see if it gets in, and then you write the talk. So there wasn't actually like 5 developers I had in mind. I was like, yeah, that sounds like cool and memey and snappy and shit. And then I actually had to write the talk, and in researching that, I found out there were way more than 5 developers that I want to work with. So that became the 5 categories of developers that I never want to work with. It's 15 devs now. So without any further ado, let's talk some shit. So the first category of developers I never want to work with again are talented jerks. So these are great developers, nobody wants to work with these people. So an example of this is the late night martyr. So late night martyr works around the clock, they get publicly thanked by executives, and that not so subtly implies that you could also be a good dev if you just, cared a little bit more. So like late night monitors often say stuff like, I actually work better at night, there's fewer distractions. So that's a lie. That's a lie that your brain tells you as it's running out of oxygen. Then everybody sees the shit that you did late at night and goes, what the fuck did you code? And those distractions, those are your coworkers, those are your collaborators, those are people you're supposed to be building software with. So next developer, cowboy. So when a cowboy codes alone. They think they can fly solo for the whole iteration, and then just everybody integrates their work in at the end. Never actually works out that way because of the silo effect. Like silos are probably the root cause of like most shitty software. Is people working alone and hoping they can integrate it in at the end. Next one, Rockstar. So Rockstar doesn't bring out the best in the rest of the band. I don't think anybody goes, oh man, you play with fucking, God, I'm already spacing on the guy's name. Who's the lead singer of Van Halen?
David Lee Roth.
No, Sammy Hagar, false. No, I don't think anybody says that David Lee Roth brings out the best in the rest of the band. So Rockstar's job is to do all the real work, and then just like trashing hotels, cleaning up the mess is somebody else's problem. And like things like testing, documentation, integration, these are junior tasks. And the real problem with that is that cleaning up other people's messes is slow as fuck. Cleaning up your own stuff, you know what you broke, you know what needs to be done. You have these handoffs, stuff falls through the cracks. So, next category of developers I never want to work with again, scared buttholes. So, these are people who do dumb, obnoxious shit out of fear. That could be fear of losing their job, fear of looking stupid, fear of being human. So, first scared butthole is the Pharisee. These are the people that Jesus kicked out of the temple. Pharisee couldn't give less of a shit if the software is making the customer happy, if it meets the spec. These are the like, well, I guess you should have asked for that kind of people. So the thing that's the most punchable about the Pharisees is how smug they are about it. Nothing makes them happier than catching a customer in a trap where they didn't think about something ahead of time. So Pharisees robotically follow commands in the most precise way possible. Like a computer. The problem is that I think that devs should be smarter than the machines that they're programming. So when people start talking about automating programmer jobs away, these are the assholes they're talking about. So, next one. It could be documentation, it could be bug fixing, it could be QA, testing, even development. But a single tasker only does one thing, and it's usually some kind of artifact. The next kind of developer is the not my jobber. So a not my jobber isn't necessarily a single tasker. They can often do a whole bunch of things, but they have a big long list of shit that they do not do, usually because they don't respect them. They're obsessed with things like job descriptions and maintaining a pretty accurate list of shit that they're not interested in doing. So, and whose fault things are. It's a super attractive quality in a developer is blame game stuff. So these people also create single points of failure, and they create a caste system on the team, because there's good jobs that some people do, and then there's shit jobs that everybody else has to do. So, next developer is the keeper of forbidden knowledge. So, this might be deployment. That's a Bob thing. Sarah does the database. There's some task that only one person is authorized to or capable of doing. These people need to give away their Legos, but they think they're going to remain employed by holding the product hostage. This is like in the scared buttholes category, because it's really based on that fear of being fired or fear of looking for a job. And ironically, if you're talented enough to be that valuable, you're also talented enough to learn something new. So this is another silo issue, and these people have a super high bust factor, because when they leave, you don't have anybody who can work on the database anymore. So, next category, antisocial twerks. At some point, like, we started being confused about antisocial being equated with being smart. But sometimes you're not a smart ass, sometimes you're just an ass. So, first person in this category. This person thinks the job would be so much better if they could just show up, get their task done, punch the time clock, leave in silence. Doesn't matter if it impacts the quality of the software. A lot of these people claim they got into programming so they didn't have to talk to anybody. How fucking sad is that? So many of these kind of process things that we have in the business, Jira, like a bunch of task assignment bullshit, is designed around supporting this kind of behavior. So, being antisocial isn't the same thing as being talented. Now, there's some people that don't like the people that they work with. There's other people that don't like the people that they work for. Dev is about human problem solving, but code masturbators don't care about the human part of that. They want a problem they can solve without having to worry about who's going to use it or who's going to maintain it. So before a code masturbator even understands a problem, they have a solution that they're positive is going to be used. So this doesn't matter if app would be better off as a Drupal site or a Salesforce integration or a spreadsheet. The code masturbator just wants to write something. There's no real problem with liking code qua code. I mean, Jesus, I run the Ember meetup. That's like being president of Tetris Club. But we're not artists, and our employers aren't patrons. So sometimes you don't need to write anything. And so what we want to do is help people get what they want, even if that means that we don't get to use cool technology that we like. So next category is the period pieces. This is somebody who's pegged to a specific time. This is past, present, or future. So first one is storyteller. Storytellers are incredulous about everything. Automatic browser reload? I used to have to compile stuff with math. You think CSS is hard? Try PHP 4. You're complaining to me about a package error? We used to have to send our packages in the mail. So, storyteller was voted most likely to code a web server in C just to make sure that it gets done right, have that really fine-grained control down at the level. So, this isn't the same thing as being old. You can be a grizzled vet in your 20s. So, talk to any Angular dev who's complained about any part of Angular 4 to somebody who's using Angular when it was in beta. And you'll think you're hearing somebody who's talking like a World War II vet about how gluten is really their war. So, in contrast, the incredulous noob has no sense of context or history. Whatever's the case now is what's always been the case and always will be the case. So they bet really hard on whatever the flavor of the month is, and anytime an incredulous noob pivots on something, it's because that technology is dead. For example, PHP, dead language, despite the fact that it literally powers 80% of the fucking web. This is like a teenager declaring that One Direction is the greatest band ever. You're pretty much bound to feel stupid with any time an incredulous noob makes some kind of proclamation. Alright, and the last period piece is the prognosticator. So, prognosticator doesn't feel like making anything because something way more useful is about to come out. Except it does, and when it doesn't change the tilt of the earth, they go, well, 2.0 is going to fix all of that. And then it doesn't, and the cycle starts all over again. So, prognosticator knows that every decision that you commit to is just a future dead app, man. All right, last category. These are the can't do dweebs. These devs don't want to, won't, or can't actually make working software. First one is the Eeyore. So, Eeyore never wants to make anything better. What's the point? If his house blows over, that just figures. Eeyore is resigned to whatever stupid corporate policy, ridiculous workflow, or hacky workaround that is currently in place. So why is Eeyore so ineffective? Because he hasn't got soul, poo. Gold platers. Gold plater always has one more thing to add before it's ready. Like an artist jealously hiding their work, they resist any kind of feedback with their customers or the users until everything is perfect. But they don't know what perfect is though, because they don't get that feedback. They keep coming up with more and more boxes to check before it's done. But like this is the key thing. It's like software is never done. Software is abandoned. You want to be continually in a state where it's done enough to learn the next thing that you need to learn. So stop looking for a finish line. Show people your in-progress work. Take the feedback with a grain of salt, and then release already. So, last one on can't do dweebs is the philosopher. So, developing an app isn't really a process of discovery for a philosopher. You're not trying to design software. Philosophers view software as a way to test their esoteric knowledge of programming. So whether it's some poorly known language feature, or a pattern that makes the code more efficient but like infinitely harder to follow, or a Kent Beck in-joke, like all apps to a philosopher are about showboating. Now the problem is that the apps they make are usually too clever by half, so they never actually work. But at least they can say that they made an app that uses the flywheel pattern from the Gang of Four book. Alright, so let's talk about some of the things that all these devs have in common. They have a really narrow focus and like super silo-y behavior. They pride themselves on being like abstract problem solvers, but they have really linear computer-like thinking. And like, you can think of it as like, they're very good at traversing the branches of a tree, but they never check to see if they're actually on the right tree to begin with. So humans have the advantage of doing lateral thinking. These are things that we need to take advantage of. Also, if you assume that you already know something, you can't learn it. So this is a massive barrier to being successful in this industry. And a lot of that is born out of fear. That's fear of not knowing something, of not being right, of not being valued, and it makes them think in very extreme terms. Now, when you look at all of these qualities, really what we're talking about is the traditional dev. This is kind of what we think of when we think of a developer type. So you close your eyes and you think about like what a developer looks like, you probably see something like this. And like, I don't think I want to work with traditional devs anymore. It's so small and fucking boring. That, this might be an unpopular thing to say at a developer conference, but one of the things that is kind of special about this is that Denver's different. Denver isn't San Francisco or New York or Austin or Seattle. We, more than any other city have seen, have people that approach problems holistically and embody fewer of these kinds of traits than any other city I've seen. So let's talk a little bit about how we got there. The development field was kind of built by a certain type of person. And then we started thinking that that person was the only kind of person that could work in this industry. We started calling it nerd culture, and it's all based around Star Wars and video games and that sort of stuff. And then these people started inbreeding into smaller and smaller and smaller groups. And now we're unable to tell if somebody is an abrasive genius or just a fucking asshole. And we also started believing that there's a standard career path for getting into this. You're a math dork in school, and then you get a CS degree, and then you get a help desk job, and then you start doing testing, and only then are you worthy of finally touching some production code. But this really kind of hurts inclusion. We're trying to bring people into the industry. People say, oh, as long as they're a Star Trek fan, I don't care what color or gender they are. But it's really not that. We need to stop this incestuous nerd shit and like start building a bigger tent. So what's the road out of this? I think the first step of this is realizing that there really is no programmer personality type. Like I didn't mention programmers in the devs that ever worked, because I really don't like that archetype. It's just bringing back this like jocks versus nerds shit from the 80s. And I think it's really just as unhealthy as all of these things. So in development, you can like sports or not, go Broncos. You can be quiet or loud. You can be like a partier, young, old. You can have a family. Like all of these people are capable of making good software. There's no like one programmer path. People can be self-taught. Then go to schools like Galvanize. They can learn development through mentorship. And this is a good thing. When people come in from all of these different directions, they bring their domain knowledge with them. So you have somebody who was a project manager for 10 years and then gets into development. They bring so much more to the table than a 22-year-old CS grad. That's not to say that 22-year-old CS grads don't belong in the industry, but when that's what we expect, that's the standard, we leave so much on the table. So let's talk a little bit about who I do want to work with, a modern dev. I want somebody who wants to work on a team, somebody who wants to explore further, somebody who can keep their ego in check, somebody who wants to know why we're building the thing that we're building, somebody who isn't afraid to get a little bit dangerous. And it's strange to me that we don't talk about this last one very much, but somebody who wants to have a good time at work. Like, and you might be hearing like big life of the party personality out of that, but it's really not what I'm saying. Every single one of these traits can be done very quietly or very boldly. So, like, these things happen on a spectrum, right? So, of course, you don't want to be so collaborative that you can't work alone, or so curious that you never actually commit to something, or so modest that nobody knows what you can do, or so big picture that you can't actually do anything specific, or so courageous that you lack some necessary caution, or so fun that you can't actually deliver something. So we know this, imagine that there's some balance of these, but we usually imagine the balance being somewhere in the middle, when a lot more likely it's further to that side. So these are the people that I want on my team. I want the coach. Coach knows what needs to be done, but knows that you won't get any better if they do all the work themselves. They love helping you be your best. They're interested in sharing what they know. They know that in the long term, investing in people is worth it. So like there's the myth of the 10Xer. This one person that everybody in the team is supposed to invest in making 10 times better. You get that same benefit if everybody makes each other 10%. You have a 10-person team, everybody makes each other 10% better. You get the same result. And you get some scaling advantage with that too, because you can make each other 11% better, and 12% better, and 15, and 20, and 30% better. And a coach is somebody who can enable that for the team, teaches people how to be that for each other. So an experimenter is different than a philosopher because they actually try and implement the things that they do, and they're willing to abandon them if they don't work. They love incremental design. They don't expect to get it right the first time. And they always want to learn something about the problem and the solution as they're building it out. So Frodo wouldn't have gotten very far without his Sam. So when you're in over your head, a Sam Gamgee doesn't ditch you to teach you a valuable lesson about independence. This is really like the opposite of a shut up and let me code kind of cat. So Sam might not have the answer either, but they want to make sure that you have somebody to bounce ideas off of and discover the answer with. So a parcel tongue understands what customers want and can explain it to them in their language. Everybody should understand the problem, but only a few people can understand it, work on it, and explain what you do to non-technical stakeholders. Parcel tongue might be the difference between your team getting funding or approval or something like that. So session musicians. This is a compliment to the rock star. Session musicians make everybody around them sound good. They bring out the best in the people around them. They want your code to rock. They want your career to grow. They want you to be happy. This is, a session musician is somebody who's really keeping you in your zone as often as possible. And then last one is perpetual beginner. So this is kind of a parallel to all the talented jerks. A perpetual beginner isn't afraid of looking dumb. They don't have an ego tied up in their code. And kind of the surprising thing about that is not only does that open them up to doing all kinds of cool things themselves, but also it makes other people around them feel okay about learning things, or not admitting that they don't know something, or trying something new. This could be somebody on day 1, this could be somebody on day 10,000, but they approach everything as new, and that's really like the valuable quality of that. So those are the people that I want on my team. If you would like to join my team, we're hiring right now. We are looking for big-hearted, hard-working educators who also code. So feel free to chat with me after the session. And as a quick PSA, Cass, raise your hand. So this is Cass Torsky. She made all of the cool animal illustrations in this talk, and I got her under contract for another 6-7 weeks or so I would get on them. And I am Kyle Coberly. These are our developers I never worked with again.